Human frees alien girl from a paralyzed station, but the station was keeping her heartbeat alive. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The storm hit the derelict station without warning, a silent ripple of charged particles brushing against the hull like a slow exhale from deep space. Emergency lights flickered in thin red lines along the corridor as Ethan Cole stepped through the airlock, the metal beneath his boots humming faintly in the cold. His breath beaded inside the visor, catching the faint glow of the failing power grid. The place felt paralyzed, frozen mid-heartbeat, as if waiting for something that never came. Ethan lifted his scanner. The display hiccuped, danced, then stabilized on a single life signature deeper inside. Faint, unsteady. He moved toward it through narrow halls where loose cables dangled like vines, brushing the shoulders of his suit with a brittle whisper. Every few steps, the lighting dimmed, leaving only the soft tick of his boots and the quiet pulse from his wrist monitor. A collapsed support beam forced him to crouch, and as he squeezed through, he caught the first sound that didn't belong to the station. A breath. Fragile. Human-like, but not quite. He followed it to a half-powered med bay where a single pod still glowed. Frost clung to its edges, shimmering as though lit from underneath. Inside lay a girl. Alien, unmistakably, with soft blue-violet skin and a faint luminescence around her temples. Tubes ran from her chest into the cracked floor, feeding the silent machinery beneath. Her eyelids fluttered when he approached, pupils adjusting slowly to his silhouette. She barely seemed conscious, yet her presence filled the small room with a quiet, trembling warmth. Ethan wiped the frost from the pod's surface with one gloved hand. "Hey," he whispered, voice softening without permission. "You're gonna be all right. I'm getting you out of here." His scanner beeped, a sharp warning. He frowned, tapped it, and then the truth appeared in a jagged line of text. Heartbeat linked to station core. Removal may cause cardiac failure. Ethan felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the failing heat grid. She wasn't just trapped here. The entire station was keeping her alive, holding her heartbeat like a fragile thread woven into rusting machinery. Her eyes opened wider, searching his face with a quiet plea. Her lips parted, voice barely a breath. "Human, don't pull me free unless you know how to keep me alive without this." Ethan swallowed, steadying his hands on the rim of the pod. Outside, the storm brushed the hull again, a low, distant tremor like a warning from the dark. He took a slow breath, letting the cold settle against his ribs. "I'm not leaving you," he said softly. In the dim, failing light, her gaze held his, fragile but steady, as if the heartbeat of the station had finally found a second rhythm to match. The medbay lights continued their slow pulse as Ethan steadied his breathing, trying to understand the tangled lines of data flashing across his wrist display. The girl inside the pod blinked slowly, her gaze drifting toward the faint sparks flickering through the cracked floor panels, as if listening to something he could not hear. "What is your name?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice calm, almost a whisper. Her lips moved with effort. "Lyria." The sound was soft, shaped by exhaustion, but it filled the space with something warm, something very alive. Ethan pressed a hand to the pod's side, letting the temperature of the glass guide his focus. The life support lines beneath the floor hummed, responding to her every breath. She was literally wired into the station's failing heartbeat. One wrong move, and she would lose the rhythm that kept her alive. "Lyria, I need to know what happened here," he said. She swallowed, a small tremor running across her features. "The station lost power. The core froze. My people tried to evacuate, but I was connected to the system when everything stopped. They could not move me without a life support relay. They promised to return with one." Her eyes drifted to the frost-laced window, but no one came back. A faint vibration rolled through the deck plating, gentle and irregular, like a heartbeat skipping a beat. Ethan felt it through his boots. The station was struggling to keep the pulse going. He glanced at his wrist display. The life readings dipped for a moment before rising again. "It is not just keeping you alive," Ethan murmured. It is depending on you just as much. Lyria's eyes softened with something that looked like sadness. I have known for a while, she whispered. I could feel it. When the power flickered, my pulse flickered too. She drew a shallow breath. I thought it was just fear. Ethan exhaled slowly, aware of the thin air cooling the room. Condensation clung to the corners of the visor as he leaned closer to examine the connection ports. The metal had fused around the biolines, shaped by heat and time. Removing them would take finesse, patience, and more time than the station seemed willing to offer. He checked his portable power unit. Its charge was enough to sustain life support for a short transfer, but he would need to link it seamlessly. No pauses. No breaks. Lyria, he said gently. If I disconnect you, I will need to transfer your heartbeat to my suit for a short time. It will feel strange, maybe uncomfortable, but it will keep you alive. Her lashes fluttered. You would share your heartbeat with me? Ethan hesitated. The idea was not conventional. The suit's emergency interface was designed for short-term medical sync, but not for a connection this delicate. Still, it was the only way. Yes, he said quietly. If that is what keeps you breathing. Her fingers twitched against the inside of the pod, trying to reach toward him through the thick glass. He matched her movement with his gloved hand, letting the faint glow from her skin illuminate the frost beneath his palm. A gentle tremor shivered through the deck again, softer this time, as if the station itself was listening. Ethan, she whispered, his name fragile in her voice. Please do not let the darkness take me. He felt something settle in his chest, a steadying resolve that cut through the cold. You are not going anywhere, he said, adjusting the tools on his belt and leaning closer to the failing pod. We are going to get you out before this place takes its last breath. The lights dimmed once more, but this time Ethan did not feel the weight of the darkness. He felt the pull of a promise. Icy condensation spread thin over Ethan's visor as the temperature in the med bay dropped again, the air turning sharp enough to sting with every breath he drew. The lights trembled overhead, their glow skipping like a hesitant pulse, and for a moment he wondered if the station itself was losing the will to hold together. Lyria's eyes tracked the dimming ceiling, her expression soft but strained, as though she could feel each lapse in the station's rhythm through the lines tethered to her chest. Ethan steadied his tools, letting the cold metal settle into his grip, and angled his wrist display toward the base of the pod. A cascading graph flickered across the screen, mapping the shared pulse of girl and station. The readings dipped again, then rose in a shaky climb. It is fading, Lyria whispered, her voice thin as drifting dust. Ethan met her gaze, the glow around her temples pulsing in a slow, uncertain pattern. Then we cannot waste time. She watched him kneel beside the cracked floor panel, his gloves brushing away debris with careful precision. The access port beneath looked almost fossilized, as if the station had grown around it in self-defense. When he attached the first sync cable, a low chime vibrated up the pod, rippling through Lyria's breath. It feels warm, she murmured. Ethan paused. The transfer line? No, she said softly. Your presence. It is steady. Familiar. The words caught him off guard, stirring something deep in the quiet space behind his ribs. He tightened the cable connection, trying to keep his focus on the data rather than the unexpected warmth in her tone. The station trembled again, more gently this time, as if waiting for what he would do next. His wrist display beeped in warning. Battery temperature dropping. Suit integrity at 84%. Time slipping. Ethan eased another cable into place, this one connecting his suit's emergency power relay to the pod's secondary port. A faint hum filled the room, weaving itself into the thinning air. Lyria inhaled slowly, eyes fluttering at the sensation. Is that my heartbeat? Ethan answered quietly. Just a test sync. I need the rhythm to match before I disconnect anything. She closed her eyes, the glow at her temples brightening for a moment before settling. It is different, she whispered. It is soft. A moment passed between them, suspended like breath against cold glass. Ethan felt it too, a subtle warmth threading from his chest through the cable. Steady and calm, anchoring the uncertainty around them. He checked the readings again. The sync was almost aligned. Almost. A faint shake ran through the deck, but unlike before, it felt less like a warning and more like acknowledgement, as though the station sensed the approaching shift. Ethan, Lyria said softly, her eyes opening again, clear and searching. If the station releases me, it may lose the last rhythm it has. It may stop entirely. Ethan rose, the soft hum of the relay filling the silence. Then we move quickly, he said, his voice steady despite the weight of her fear. And we give it a new rhythm to follow. Her gaze lingered on him, hopeful and uncertain all at once. Will you stay close when you disconnect me? He stepped beside the pod, placing a hand over the glass where her fingers rested weakly beneath it. I am not going anywhere, he said, letting the promise steady the tremor in the air. The lights dimmed once more, but this time the darkness felt expectant, like the quiet before a held breath. The sync line on his display steadied into a single, shared pulse. The shared pulse on Ethan's wrist display steadied into a thin, unwavering line, the quiet hum of alignment threading through the cold air like a promise. He felt it beneath his gloves, a faint warmth traveling through the sync cable, answering each beat of his own with a softer echo from within the pod. Lyria exhaled, her breath fogging the inside of the glass in a dim, feathered bloom. It feels lighter, she whispered, as though speaking too loudly might break the fragile rhythm. Ethan adjusted the relay to reinforce the sync, watching the numbers settle into a near-perfect match. That is good, he said softly. Your heartbeat is starting to follow the suit's rhythm. It means the system will accept the transfer. A low vibration rippled through the floor, different from the earlier tremors. This one felt slow, almost thoughtful, as if the station was aware of what was about to happen. Lyria's eyes shifted toward the flickering ceiling. It hears us, she murmured. It knows. Ethan paused. He was not sure he believed a failing structure could understand anything, but the way the vibrations responded to her voice made him hesitate. The station had kept her alive all this time, pressing its own last strength into her heartbeat. Maybe, in some strange way, it had learned to rely on her just as much. Then we will be gentle, Ethan said, lowering himself beside the pod's main connector. We will give it time to let go. Lyria watched him with a quiet intensity, her fingers trembling faintly where they rested inside the pod. Ethan, she said softly, when you disconnect me, there might be a moment when I cannot breathe on my own. You must not be alarmed. His hand paused over the relay controls. How long? A few seconds, she whispered. My people's lungs respond slowly after long suspension. The heartbeat follows the breath. Ethan nodded, absorbing the details, letting them settle into the practiced calm he used on rescue missions. Then I will be right here. She closed her eyes for a moment, as though memorizing his voice. The glow at her temples dimmed, then brightened again in a soft, rhythmic pattern that almost matched the pulsing lights overhead. Ethan took a slow breath and unlatched the first of the life support clamps. The pod hissed, releasing a thin veil of cold vapor that drifted between them like a pale curtain. Lyria inhaled sharply but did not protest. The station's hum deepened, a long, drawn-out tone that quivered through the floor plates. Ethan hesitated, sensing the shift. It is afraid, Lyria whispered, eyes opening again. It thinks you are taking me away too quickly. Ethan steadied his voice. I am not taking you. I am carrying you. Her expression softened, tension easing in her shoulders. Then let it hear that. Ethan rested one hand gently against the pod, letting the warmth of his glove meet the cool glass. He spoke quietly, almost to the station itself. I will not let her heartbeat fade. You have my word. The hum wavered, then softened, the lights settling into a calmer glow. Lyria watched him with something close to awe, her voice barely a whisper. It trusts you. Ethan adjusted the final relay, ensuring every line was stabilized. The sync reading pulsed with reassuring steadiness. They were ready. The room felt impossibly still, as if even the air was holding its breath. Lyria's eyes met his, steady despite the fear beneath. When you are ready, Ethan, she whispered. He reached for the main connector, letting the rhythm guide his hands, letting the quiet promise he had made anchor him in the dark. The relay lights shimmered along Ethan's wrist display, each soft pulse mirroring the quiet rise and fall of Lyria's breath inside the pod. The station seemed to sense the moment approaching. The hum beneath the floor stretched into a long, held note, as if bracing itself. Ethan steadied his hands over the main connector, drawing one slow breath to match the shared rhythm between them. Lyria's eyes followed the motion, her gaze calm but luminous with a fragile anticipation. You must move gently, she whispered. Not fast, not slow. My heartbeat listens to intention. Ethan nodded, letting the words settle into the steady cadence of his breathing. His gloves brushed the connector, and the pod emitted a soft chime, warm and uncertain. The lighting dimmed again, not in warning, but in something that felt almost like reverence. Frost curled along the edges of the glass, blurring her features before clearing again, revealing the soft glow around her temples. I am ready, she murmured. Ethan eased the first connection loose. A small shift of air moved between them, thin and cool, as if the station exhaled in response. His display flickered but held steady, the sync line maintaining its rhythm. Lyria drew a shallow breath, her fingers tightening faintly against the interior frame. I can feel the station easing its hold, she whispered. It is letting me go. Her voice carried a mixture of relief and grief, as though she were leaving behind something that had protected her even while trapping her. Ethan loosened the second connector, careful not to disturb the cable that linked her to his own suit. A soft hum rippled through the air, more gentle this time, and he felt it resonate through his boots like a distant echo. How are you doing? Ethan asked, keeping his tone steady. Lyria blinked slowly. The rhythm is different. It is quieter, but it feels, she paused, searching for the right word. Alive, in a way I did not expect. The third connector resisted, fused by years of pressure and temperature shifts. Ethan applied controlled force, guiding the release mechanism until it unlocked with a soft click. Lyria gasped, her shoulders lifting slightly, the glow at her temples brightening. That one carried the deepest thread, she said softly. The station leaned on it for comfort. Ethan hesitated at the last connector, the final line, binding her to the floor, the core, and the fading heartbeat of the structure around them. He rested his hand on the pod, as if offering reassurance to both girl and station. You are not losing her, he whispered, speaking to the silent metal beneath them. You are trusting her with the next step. Lyria's breath trembled, her eyes softening in gratitude. Ethan, she said, voice barely more than a breath. When you release the final line, my pulse will shift to match yours fully. You must stay close so it does not falter. I will, he said without hesitation. He checked the sync line again. Perfect rhythm. Perfect alignment. The quiet hum in the room steadied. Even the flickering lights paused. Lyria watched him with a calm that shimmered beneath the surface, equal parts fear and trust. The moment you lift it, she whispered, I will follow your heartbeat. Ethan tightened his grip around the connector. For a brief second, the silence in the bay felt complete, like the stillness before dawn. Then, with deliberate care, he lifted the final link free. The final connector lifted with a soft release of pressure, a sound so delicate it barely rose above the faint hum of Ethan's suit. For a heartbeat, nothing moved, nothing breathed, nothing dared to shift the fragile stillness suspended between them. Then the pod lights flickered once, dimmed, and the life support lines beneath the floor slowed to a gentle, fading glow. The station exhaled a long, low vibration that trembled through the metal plates like a final sigh. Lyria's eyes fluttered, her breath catching in a thin, unsteady pull. The sync line on Ethan's wrist spiked, then began to settle into the pattern of his own heartbeat. You are all right, he said, his voice calm even as his pulse quickened. Just follow the rhythm. Let it guide you. Her gaze found his through the thinning frost on the glass. I can hear it, she whispered, her words soft and distant. Your heartbeat, it is steady. A faint tremor ran through her shoulders as she adjusted to the new cadence. The glow at her temples fluttered, then brightened, matching the subtle rise and fall on Ethan's display. The room felt warmer, though no system supported that warmth. It came from the simple fact that she was breathing on her own. The station is quieter, Lyria said, almost in wonder, as though it is listening for something that is no longer there. Ethan stepped closer and unlocked the pod seal. A soft hiss of warm air drifted between them as the glass lifted, releasing the faint scent of ozone and preserved linens. Lyria's form, freed from the constraints of the pod, looked fragile in the dim light. But her eyes held a clarity that was not there before. Ethan extended a hand. Take your time. There is no rush. She lifted her hand slowly, as though testing the weight of the air itself. When her fingers brushed his glove, a soft pulse traveled through the relay cable into his suit, syncing with the steady beat he offered. Her touch carried a warmth that surprised him, gentle yet unmistakably alive. "Your heartbeat is stronger than the station's," she said softly. "It feels different." "Different good or different concerning?" Ethan asked, attempting a small smile. Lyria considered the question with a quiet seriousness. "Different hopeful." He helped her sit upright, feeling how light she was, as if the years connected to the station had drained anything that did not directly sustain her survival. She leaned slightly toward him, adjusting to the motion, her breath steadying with each passing second. The station hummed faintly beneath them, softer now, less insistent. Ethan glanced around the dim bay. "We should move before the systems shut down entirely. Your body needs a stable environment to finish the adjustment." Lyria nodded, her expression resolute despite the strain. "I will follow your lead." Ethan slipped an arm around her shoulders, supporting her weight carefully. Her step was unsteady but sure, guided by the gentle pulse that echoed through the relay cable between them. As they crossed the threshold of the med bay, the lights flickered once more, this time not in warning, but in a quiet farewell. Lyria looked back at the fading glow. "It kept me alive," she whispered, "even when it could do nothing else." Ethan guided her forward, his voice low and steady. "And now it is our turn to keep each other alive." The sync line on his wrist held perfectly, a single, steady pulse shared between two hearts moving together into the dim corridor ahead. The corridor beyond the med bay stretched into a dim tunnel of flickering lights, each pulse of illumination fading a little more than the last. Ethan adjusted, his grip around Lyria's shoulders, supporting her as she took slow, cautious steps. Her weight was feather-light, her movements careful, as though she was relearning what it meant to exist without the station guiding each breath. The relay cable between them glowed faintly, carrying the steady pulse of Ethan's heartbeat into her fragile rhythm. Every few seconds, she glanced at the display on his wrist, as if seeking reassurance that the shared beat still held. "The air feels different out here," Lyria murmured. Her voice was stronger now, but still soft, like someone speaking after waking from a long dream. "It is colder, but it feels real." Ethan guided her past a collapsed support beam. The metal bowed inward like a bent spine. "Your body is adjusting," he said. "Your lungs are working without the station's help for the first time in a long while." She paused, placing a hand lightly against the wall. The surface vibrated under her touch, a faint, irregular tremor. "It is struggling," she whispered. "The heartbeat it used to follow is gone." Ethan felt a weight settle in his chest. "We are not leaving it with nothing. Systems like these usually have backup cores. If I can reach the auxiliary deck, I might stabilize it long enough for our evacuation." Lyria turned toward him, her expression caught between concern and understanding. "You mean to help it, even now?" He held her gaze. "It kept you alive. I cannot ignore that." A quiet warmth touched her features, as though his words eased something inside her. She nodded, allowing him to guide her forward. They moved through a junction where the temperature dropped sharply. Frost glittered across the panels, forming delicate patterns like branching veins. Lyria shivered, leaning closer to Ethan for warmth. "Your heartbeat changes when you worry," she whispered. "It becomes louder." Ethan managed a small breath of amusement. "You can tell that?" She nodded gently. "It feels like a signal reaching through the cold." The relay cable pulsed again, matching his steady beat to hers. As they approached the central lift shaft, the doors hung halfway open, frozen mid-motion. Ethan peered down the dark shaft. The auxiliary deck was several levels below. The lift was inoperable, but the emergency ladder remained intact. He glanced at Lyria. "We will have to climb down. Slowly. I will go first and secure you from below." She studied the shaft with wide, uncertain eyes. "My strength is not fully mine yet." Ethan tightened his hold on her hand. "You do not need full strength. You only need to hold on to me." Her fingers curled gently around his glove, a silent agreement. He positioned himself on the ladder, bracing his feet before guiding her to step forward. The moment she placed her hands on the rung, the sync cable glowed brighter, as if anchoring her courage to his heartbeat. Inch by inch, they descended. The cold deepened, brushing against their skin like drifting ice. Halfway down, the station quivered again, a faint tremor running through the metal. Lyria paused, her breath unsteady. It is calling for me, she whispered. The station, it remembers my rhythm. Ethan looked up at her, his voice steady. Then let it listen to ours instead. She exhaled slowly, her pulse syncing once more with his. They continued downward, each careful step illuminated by the soft glow from the relay cable. When they reached the auxiliary deck, the station lights flared weakly, as if acknowledging their arrival. Ethan tightened his grip on Lyria's hand. This is where we give the station something new to hold on to, he said. Lyria nodded, her eyes bright with trust and quiet resolve, her heartbeat steady in perfectly measured time with his own. The auxiliary deck greeted them with a dim amber glow, a softer light than the harsh reds above, as if the station was offering what little strength it had left. The air carried a faint warmth, but beneath it lingered the fragile tremor of systems nearing their final threshold. Ethan steadied Lyria as her feet touched the grated floor. Her breath fogged in the cooler current, but she remained upright, her fingers curled around his arm for balance. The relay cable between them pulsed gently, matching the calm beat on Ethan's wrist display. This place feels different, Lyria murmured, her gaze drifting across the room. It is quieter here, as if the station is listening rather than speaking. Ethan guided her toward the central console, a low, dome-shaped structure surrounded by faded hollow panels. Dust and frost clung to the transparent surfaces, muting their once bright displays. He brushed one panel clean with his glove. The screen flickered, sputtered, then revealed a series of uneven heartbeat graphs, the remnants of the station's failing core rhythm. Lyria stared. At the readings, a soft ache touching her expression. This is what it followed from me. It mirrored my pulse for years. And it survived because of you. Ethan said softly. What we are doing now is giving it a chance to rest. She tilted her head, listening to the faint vibrations under her feet. It is afraid of stopping. It is not designed to feel fear, but the pattern carries something like it. Ethan connected his portable power unit to the console. The lights shifted, blooming briefly before dimming into a steady glow. He checked the output on his display. The core will stabilize if I give it a temporary rhythm to follow, just long enough for us to escape. Lyria turned to him, surprise widening her eyes. Your heartbeat. Only for a moment, Ethan said. Machines adapt quickly. If it senses stability, it will latch on. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. You would offer your rhythm to it? After everything. It kept you alive, Ethan answered. That is enough. Her expression softened, carrying a warmth that reached beyond the cold of the room. You are unlike anyone I have met, Ethan Cole. He swallowed the quiet weight of her words and began linking the relay cable from his suit to the console port. The station hummed, sensing the connection, a tremor rolling through the metal grating like a hesitant breath. Lyria placed her hand on the console, her glow shimmering faintly beneath her fingertips. It is listening, she whispered. Your heartbeat is already reaching it. Ethan watched the graph stabilize as his rhythm transferred through the relay. The once jagged lines smoothed into calm hills, reflecting the steady cadence within his chest. The station responded with a soft, encompassing hum that vibrated the air around them. Lyria turned to him, wonder softening her features. It trusts you. Then we should move, Ethan said, disconnecting the line once the rhythm held. We do not have long before the portable unit reaches its limit. She took a slow step toward him. Her heartbeat, visible on his display, matched his perfectly. No hesitation, no falter. Ethan, she said quietly, there is something you must know. When you freed me from the pod, you did more than share a rhythm. He looked at her, hearing the shift in her tone. What do you mean? Lyria's gaze shimmered in the faint amber light. My people do not bond easily. But when a heartbeat saves another, when it carries life through fear and stillness, the bond becomes something deeper than we expect. Ethan felt a quiet stillness settle inside him, deeper than the cold, more profound than the hum of machines. Lyria stepped closer, her voice barely a breath. My heartbeat does not just follow yours. It remembers you. The station hummed again, as if echoing her words, a gentle resonance spreading across the deck. The station's auxiliary lights dimmed to a soft amber as Ethan and Lyria stood together at the console, the hum beneath their feet growing calmer with each passing moment. The rhythm Ethan had offered settled deep into the structure, guiding it like a quiet hand on a trembling shoulder. Lyria watched the steady lines on his wrist display, her breath slowing to match the gentle cadence reflected there. "The station is stabilizing," Ethan said, adjusting the portable unit to maintain the flow. "It has accepted the new rhythm." Lyria stepped closer, her shoulder brushing his lightly as she studied the readings. "It trusts you completely," she murmured. "Machines rarely trust anyone, but this one does." A soft tremor moved through the floor, not sharp or urgent, but warm, almost grateful. Ethan felt it through his boots, a silent acknowledgement from the fading core above them. It was enough to confirm that the station would hold long enough for their escape. He powered down the relay cable and disconnected it from the console. The lights shifted again, this time not flickering, but pulsing in a slow pattern that mirrored the heartbeat he had shared. Lyria placed her hand flat against the console, her glow illuminating the smooth surface. "It is saying farewell," she whispered. The moment hung between them, gentle and still. Then Ethan touched her arm. "We should go. The escape pod is on the upper deck, and we cannot risk the portable unit running dry." She nodded, her expression composed but touched with a quiet sadness. They moved through the corridor, the faint light outlining their path. The station's tremors grew softer with each step they took away from the auxiliary deck, as though the structure was settling into rest, its long vigil finally ending. When they reached the emergency lift shaft, Ethan secured the harness around Lyria before descending the ladder with her carefully. In tow, her hands were steadier now, her breath deeper and more certain. "You are adjusting," Ethan said as they climbed. She smiled faintly. "Your heartbeat guides me more than the ladder." The climb took time, but when they reached the medbay level, the doors to the escape pod corridor glowed faintly blue, a color untouched by the fading systems. Ethan led her forward, his steps slowing when he noticed the lights ahead shifting to a soft pattern. 3 slow pulses, 1 pause, repeating like a gentle farewell. Lyria's hand tightened around his. "It is echoing the last rhythm you gave it." "Then it is holding on," Ethan said quietly. "Long enough for us to leave." At the escape pod, he helped her inside, securing the straps carefully. The pod interior glowed with a warm white light, shielding them from the cold blue of the failing station. Lyria looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the glow. "Ethan," she whispered, "there is something more you should know." He paused, meeting her gaze. "What is it?" She lifted her hand, touching the relay port on his suit. "When my heartbeat aligned with yours, it did not just mimic it. My people believe that when a heartbeat saves another, it becomes part of that person's memory. My heart will always remember you, even if the stars change." The words settled into the quiet of the pod, filling the small space with an unspoken warmth. Ethan reached for her hand, letting her fingers rest against his glove. "Then we carry that memory forward," he said softly. The pod door sealed with a gentle hiss. Through the small viewport, the corridor lights pulsed one final time, the rhythm slow and steady, like a tired heartbeat finding peace. As the pod detached and drifted away from the station, Lyria leaned her head lightly against Ethan's shoulder, her breath matching the calm rise and fall of his. Outside the window, the station floated in silence, the faint glow of its core shimmering like a final whisper against the dark. Lyria watched it fade, her voice quiet but certain. "It followed your heartbeat to the end." Ethan looked at the distant lights of the station, his hand gently closing around hers. "And you followed it back to life." The stars stretched outward around them, their quiet brilliance reflected in her eyes, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. They did not need to. In the soft hum of the escape pod, 2 rhythms moved in perfect unison, carrying them into the waiting dark with a bond only silence could hold.